to, I'm Liz Smith. I know all of y'all, managing director for the association, and we're joined, Blair Kennedy, who is our director of programming for the foundation, is with us. And I'm going to turn things over to Randall Johnson, who is the chair of the NCEDA Foundation, to get us started and share more about the fellowship program.
Yeah, thanks, Liz, and thanks y'all for joining us. As Liz said, hopefully we'll have a few more people jump on as we move through the call, but I did want to thank y'all for taking time today to learn more about the fellowship program and potentially being an EDO host. Blair and Natalie and Liz are really going to be the experts and give you some information as we move forward with this process, but we appreciate you coming on board and the EDO hosting role. As y'all may know, the foundation was started in 2020 by NCEDA. NCEDA has always had a professional development focus and funded scholarships and that sort of thing, but we decided we wanted to expand on that great work NCEDA has always done by developing this foundation and additional programs to support the membership of NCEDA and to build that community across the state. So we have focused on four main pillars with the foundation. One is scholarships. As I mentioned, we have dramatically increased the amount of scholarships we give to our members across the year. So far, the foundation's funded about $150,000 in scholarships. We also have a fellows program that we'll learn more about today. The research committee that funds cutting edge research to keep up to speed on trends and interest areas in economic development, and our awareness program that we launched in Western North Carolina last month that we will expand to the rest of the state over the next few months and years. So we are in expansion mode with the foundation. Blair has joined us this year to help us expand our programs. And one of those areas is the fellowship program, which we hope to expand next summer. Historically, we've had 2 fellows per year, and we're looking at expanding that number this year. So one thing I want to make sure we all understand at the outset is this truly is a fellows program. It's not like a traditional internship program. We look for meaningful projects for the fellows to take on at the EDO. And we look for these master's students who are coming on as fellows to provide really substantial benefit to your organization with what they've learned so far in schooling and what they've learned so far in their previous experiences. So this is an internship on steroids, maybe, or it's definitely a more of a fellowship than an internship type of role. We want the EDOs to benefit from this as much as the fellows benefit through what you learn and what they bring to the table. So moving forward, I hope you'll keep that in mind and make sure that you have meaningful projects, but also you think about ways that these young experts can bring their expertise to your organization. I'll talk a little bit now about the timeline for the EDO process. We are in the middle of the application period right now. It's important, I think, as you think about developing your application, to think about a process and a project that will be meaningful for your organization, something that's going to have some real meat to it, opportunities for the fellow to have connections with your leadership in the county. You'll hear from Natalie later on one of the projects that she asked her fellow to work on. There have been a variety of different fellowships, and we'll talk about those, but think about what's going to be helpful to you and your organization, and make sure you provide as much detail as you can in the application. The application is pretty straightforward. It's relatively easy to fill out. Obviously, Blair and Liz are there to help if you have any needs there, but I encourage you to think a lot about what you really want to achieve with this fellowship and include as much detail as you can in there. We last year got, I think, 11 applications, so this is a competitive process, and I encourage you to provide as much detail as you can there. So we're accepting applications for the EDO hosts through the end of October, specifically October 31st at 5 p.m. So we hope you'll all think about participating in the program and submitting an application by that deadline. After we receive the applications, we'll set up an application review period of a few days to give the selection committee about a week to consider all of the applications. Will come together as a committee and select the top applicants to move forward. At that point, we'll inform those top applicants and start a process of interviewing. So we'll have a in-person, or I should say Zoom interview with the top EDO host and start to nail down exactly how we want to move forward with those EDO hosts. At the 12/4, December 4th networking luncheon for NCEDA, we will announce those EDO hosts and then we'll open the application period for the fellows. So that's a quick synopsis of that part of the process. Any questions or thoughts from anyone on the Zoom call about that process or the timeline or things that you might want to know about how to think about applying? I noticed a few people have joined us since we started. Thanks for jumping on with us, and I welcome any questions you might have. And while you're thinking about that, I wanted to wait a little bit before we did introductions to give more people a chance to jump online. Let me take this moment just to go around the Zoom call and see who we have on board with us and see if you have any questions. I'll start with the first person on my screen is Shannon Johnson.
Hi, Shannon Johnson, and I'm with the town of Zebulon. And I'll throw in a question too. You don't have to
Sure.
answer it now, but if you could give some kind of example of previous programs, you don't have to say the place, but just what we're talking about here.
Yeah, absolutely. If I can wait, you'll get some information from Natalie. She has an ideal experience, I think, and project, and we can fill you in on some other details as well after she finishes on her project. If we can wait a couple of minutes on that, Shannon, if you don't mind, we'll move through the rest of the timeline and get to Natalie. So thanks for that question. And next is Ryan McDaniels.
Hey, good afternoon. Ryan McDaniels with the town of Harrisburg. And I'm curious to learn more, so I'm not going to ask a question. So I'll wait until afterwards, and hopefully all my questions will be answered. If not, I'll follow back up.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thanks, Randall.
Bill Slagle. Bill Slagle, if you can hear us, if you'd introduce
Yeah, my
yourself.
camera's not working. This is Bill Slagle up in Mitchell County. Okay. EDO
Great.
for the chamber and EDC.
Thank you, Bill. Brittany Odom. Welcome.
Hi, Brittany Odom, Marketing Manager for Fayetteville Cumberland Economic Development Corporation. Just kind of sitting in to learn more about this and see if we can benefit from it.
Very good. And Chella Scott.
Hi, I'm Shayla Scott. I'm from FCEDC as well. So I'm here with Brittany just gathering information. Thank you.
Wonderful. And I see Neil came on screen. Neil?
Yeah, hi, Neil Duncan here with the town of Holly Springs. Also, curious to learn more and excited about this opportunity. So thank you for putting this on.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us. Michael Worley.
Michael Worley, Alexander County. I'm the Director of Economic Development.
Thank you, Michael. Thanks for joining us. And I see a phone number starting with 984 area code.
Hi, my name's Amanda Lewis. I'm with the town of Clayton. I'm their economic development coordinator. I just joined today to get some more information.
Great. And did you say this is Amanda Lewis? I missed that first part.
Yes, I am Amanda Lewis with the town of Clayton.
Great. Thanks for joining us. And finally, our distinguished board member, Kelly Andrews.
Hey there, Kelly Andrews. I'm with Pitt County Economic Development. happy to learn more about this great program.
Great. Thanks y'all for joining us. I'll mention too, before we move on to the next part of the timeline, we really intend these fellowships to be accessible to anybody in our network across the state. We focus heavily on underserved and rural areas and places that need additional resources, but we've also funded disaster recovery in Buncombe County as an example in a tier 3. So I'm interested to hear your questions later as well on those sorts of things. Let me move now to the fellows timeline. I mentioned we'll announce the EDO host at our networking luncheon in December, on December 4th. At that time, we'll also open the fellows application. So we'll ask people from MPA and MBA programs across the state to apply to be a fellow. And that application starts 12/4, ends on January 30. And we'll have the similar type of selection process after that deadline, where we'll have a selection committee get together, review all the applications, and start to think about pairing up those fellows with the EDOs. It becomes a little bit of a process at that point, a complex process to make sure that not only do we find a fellow that merits receiving a fellow award and being part of this process, but also matches well with the interest of the EDO and the needs of the EDO. So we'll have additional interviews at that point where the EDO and the fellows will meet to make sure that there is a good fit, there's alignment with that fellow's skills and interests and the needs of the EDO. And that'll take place in the February timeframe, mid-February, and with the fellows being announced at the end of February, around February 27th. That is the student timeline, the fellow timeline, and the EDO timeline. Once we've selected those fellows and EDOs, our timeline for the actual fellowship starts in mid-May and goes through mid-August. Basically, when the students are out of their graduate program, they'll spend the summer 10 to 12 weeks with you. We budget around $10,000 for each fellow. That's $7,200 in wages and taxes, et cetera. That is managed by NCEDA Foundation. So that's managed by Liz and Blair and their team. We also include a $1,000 housing stipend. It's important to think ahead of time about housing. I'm sure housing is an issue just generally for our workforce in most of your areas. And so thinking about someone who will come into your community for just 2 months or so, 2.5 months, and where they will live potentially is an important factor in thinking about how to shape your fellowship. You might also want to think about how to divide remote time with time in your office. There might be an opportunity for you just to have a remote worker who comes in for some period of time into your office and lives somewhere else, maybe even nearby, without needing housing in your area. So if you do want somebody really to be on site most days or all days, let us know that so we can be prepared to let the fellows know that and make sure there's some alignment there. Also, one of the keys with this fellowship program is our continued focus on professional development. So even though this person is learning a lot from you and your EDOs, we want that person to go to the basic economic development course at Chapel Hill in August. So we'll work with the EDOs and the fellows to make sure there is scheduling to allow that. And we also expect and hope that the fellows will attend the annual conference of NCEDA in June so that they can begin networking and building their professional network with NCEDA professionals from across the state. And then in the fall, we ask the fellows and the EDAs to participate in our fall conference program to update our membership and our attendees about the project that you hosted and to talk about any learnings that came out of that experience and to show the importance of the fellowship program, both to your EDO and to the fellows development. So the EDO will incur some costs. NCEDA Foundation covers most of the cost of this fellowship, but EDO may incur costs related to a workspace or an office, related to providing a laptop and other supplies necessary for that person to do work. But all of the professional development, the stipend is provided by NCEDA Foundation. You may also want to add to those amounts. It's completely up to the EDO, but you might find that you have some funding for additional wages or for an additional housing stipend. That is all up to you and to be determined later. And we're happy to help guide you through that thought process if you'd like. So I've covered a lot of detail there, kind of in a whirlwind, and I expect additional questions later. I'm happy to answer any questions on that timeline and any of the funding issues at this point. If there are none, we'll move to Natalie, but let me open it for any questions that you might have about what I just conveyed. Okay, hearing none, let's go to the really important part, the fun part, hearing Natalie's thoughts on her EDO experience as a host, working with what I think was an amazing fellow, and she and that fellow were the dream team. So I'll hand it to Natalie just to talk about some of her experiences and maybe help guide you in your thought process. Natalie?
Yeah, thank you, Randall. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Natalie Hawkins. I'm the president of the Moore County Economic Development Partnership and live here in Pinehurst, North Carolina. And, you know, when the foundation was, you know, launching this program and they looked for pilot, you know, programs or pilot agencies, I guess, to try out a trial run of this, I immediately raised my hand because we're a small EDO. It's myself and an administrative assistant and business development director. So we only have a staff of 3. And I had a really big project that I wanted to get accomplished and didn't have the capacity to do that. You know, as each and every one of you on the call knows, you get pulled in so many different directions in this field. And, you know, I just didn't have the chunk of time that I needed to devote to that project. So, I raised my hand, I submitted my application. Randall probably thought it was overkill because I am a former CPA and I'm very detail oriented. So I put all kinds of information in there and I tried to think, you know, about it as much as I could. And so what we needed help with was we, like many other communities across the state of North Carolina, need product, right? We need industrial sites and we need buildings to meet this growing demand of businesses that are wanting to locate to our state. And so I wanted to do an evaluation of all of our historical project leads to determine, could we start a shell building program in our community? And if we did, what would that look like? So, so my proposal was for our fellow, who ended up being Cameron Brown from ECU, now at UNC Chapel Hill, was for him to do a lot of research and analysis for me, and to pull all that information together and to formulate some recommendations that we could then take to our board of directors. And so that is what he did. It was a very large project. And I broke it down. You know, I did a lot of planning in advance of when Cameron started working with us. And I broke, you know, I kind of set weekly milestones because it was such a large project, of what, you know, what would need to be accomplished kind of each week over that fellowship period. And that really helped us, I would say, stay on track. And it was really helpful for him because it laid out our expectations of him. At the end of the day, he completed, you know, a very comprehensive analysis, you know, analyzed 3 years worth of data. He surveyed all 100 counties to identify where shell building programs existed in the state and where, which communities, if they didn't have one in place now, were considering a shell building program. He compiled the whole report, did created maps, graphs, charts, all of that information. And then he actually delivered the report to our executive committee. Because I wanted him to feel ownership of the project. I wanted him to have that experience. And so that's what Cameron did for us. I do want to make a couple of general comments about how important it is, if you're considering a fellow, to plan in advance. What that project or scope of work might look like for you. In addition to this, in addition to the shell building report being his project, I also made a point to let him see all or as many facets as I possibly could of economic development and what we do. So for example, he attended a closed session meeting with us as we talked with town council about incentives for a potential project. So he got to see how all of that worked and, filling out the project summary form to submit for incentives. So he got to see what all of that looked like. He participated in committee meetings. We have a workforce development committee. We were planning for an entrepreneurship summit. So he participated in all of those meetings. The one thing that I think I might have done a little bit differently was he didn't get to see a lot of the BRE work that we do. And that's because I gave him such a large project to complete. And in hindsight, that was really the only feedback he had for us, was that he loved being exposed to so many different things and learning so much about economic development, the partnerships that we have, the working relationships, with governments and others in the community, but that he didn't get to see that part. So if you do end up submitting an application, make sure you reserve some time for your fellow to go on those BRE visits and actually, spend some time with your businesses in your community.
Now, let me say two things before we open it up for questions. First of all, EDO host, and I don't think there are any negatives or anything that you lacked in the offerings that you gave to Cameron. So thanks for that. Even though there are some things you would have liked to improve, maybe there was nothing that he or NCEDA Foundation found wanting in your leadership there. So thank you. I also wanted to mention to everyone that as you look at the application to be an EDO, you'll see at the bottom of that application 2 examples of previous applications, the one from Moore County and Natalie. These are just 2-pagers. It's not a lot of detail, as many bullets as you'd like in there, bullet points, but it's a couple of pages of as much detail as you can give. But Natalie's is ideal for the work that she just described. The Buncombe County application or project overview is also attached. That was a couple of pages looking at their disaster recovery plan for the fellow. So I encourage you to look at those just to get an idea of some of the detail you'll want to think about with your project.
Randall,
any questions for Natalie?
Can I add something else? I just want to say that
Absolutely.
For me, the matching experience, that you can have maybe a little bit of anxiety about, who will I get? I just want to tell you from my perspective, it couldn't have been any smoother or any better. The foundation forwarded the applications and they listed out, they identified the fellow applicants identified, what their interests were, what their skill sets were. And knowing that I needed a lot of research and data analysis for my project, Cameron had that in spades. And because I was very clear about the project that I wanted the fellow to complete for our organization, he was able to say, oh, I want that one because that aligns with my skills. So I would say as you're completing your application and you're just thinking through like, what is it in our office that we've been wanting to get to, or that could really make a difference in our organization if we could just get over a hurdle, and how could, what a fellow help us do that. I would just encourage you to be specific, because it's helpful to the fellows to know what it is you're looking for. And the interview process was great. Enjoyed meeting all the fellow applicants that we met with, and it gives you a lot of hope for the future generation, coming into this field. So I would encourage you to apply if you're thinking about it. So
Natalie, will you
Natalie,
also
you brought up
mention?
an important point there that I was just going to follow up with Natalie that that's an important part about the process. We select the ED so that the fellows that don't, and they can let us know I'm applying to be part of this program and this program. And so it helps us with the matchmaking process. Sorry, Blair, go ahead.
Oh, you're fine. I think there's a little bit of a delay, so you might not have heard me. I was just going to say too, Natalie, you had mentioned last year the benefit that you also got from the fellow in terms of like the
yeah.
things that you learned from him, which I think
Mhm.
is something that you might want to touch on.
Yeah, happy to share that. So, obviously the fellowship program is of a tremendous benefit to the fellow. But what some of the things that really benefited me was, no, in our organization, number one, we were able to get something completed that we'd been wanting to do for a long time. But it also helped me as a leader develop a little more, because it gave me one more person to manage. It helped me, prioritize, things for the fellow. We're in a situation in our office where we have employees who've been doing this for a long time. So to bring in a younger person where we could actually teach and develop them, that was very rewarding professionally for me. Helped me, hone some of my project management skills too. So, I benefited personally, I guess is the point that I want to make.
That fellow also was on board during the US Open, so he met the Secretary of
Mhm.
Commerce. Hopefully some of this has answered your question. I'll mention too that one of the projects last year or earlier this year was with the Mid-East Commission, and was looking at a variety of different tasks and roles within a nonprofit governmental organization, COG. The Buncombe County project earlier this year was looking at disaster recovery needs. And then you heard Natalie's project there. So it's the variety of projects is pretty vast. It depends on what the EDO needs. But I encourage you to look at the two project synopses at the bottom of that application. But did that answer your question, or did you have need additional information on that topic, Shannon? Okay, great.
Randall,
Yes.
and I'll add one thing. So don't hesitate to apply even if you don't know exactly, minute by minute what they're going to be doing. Like Natalie had a specific project in mind. The Buncombe County, we included those two examples for a reason, because hers was very detailed, knew exactly what the project was. Buncombe County's was going to be working on disaster recovery, but there were a lot of things in play. So they knew the general idea, and listed some possible, projects that the fellow would be working on, but didn't have everything nailed down just because of how that work was going to go. So we want you to have a general idea. We don't want you to just come in and say, yeah, we'd love to have a fellow and they're going to work on economic development projects. We need more detail than that. But we all know the nature of this work. And so don't hesitate if you don't have it, to the, every I dotted and T crossed, please still apply.
Yeah, and I would add one more thing too. I mean, if you are successful in being selected as a host, one of the things that I found that was really helpful was I communicated with my fellow in advance of the start date. Like we had a great open line of communication. We had a couple of Zoom calls. Before his first day of work, I said, here's our dress code, here's where to park, like just all the stuff that you would do to onboard a new employee. And I actually treated him like he was an employee. I didn't treat him like he was the intern over here doing the project. He was a part of our team, and he really appreciated that and gave us a lot of good feedback on how he felt so welcomed and just embraced by the entire organization.
Any other questions or thoughts, concerns that we might be able to address, projects that you might be considering that we could give a little bit of feedback on?
I have a question. How many EDOs did you support with the fellow last year?
We supported 2 last year and 2 earlier this summer. Yeah, so we plan to expand that next year, and we're considering that right now. We also funded a couple of internships. We got so many great applications last year that we did not want to just limit our funding to 2 fellows, even though that's all we really felt like we could support with all of our resources. So we funded 2 other internships at a lower level, $3,500, without the additional professional development support and some of the other supports that come with this fellowship. So we are looking to deploy as much assistance as we can at the foundation. So to answer your question in a short way, though, 2 and 2. So 4 so far. We have an alumni base of 4 so far.
Okay, and then for cost, the professional development, ED course at School of Government, and the annual conference. When you're covering the cost of those, are you also covering like their lodging and per diem, or is that something that's on our side?
No, the NCEDA Foundation covers all costs of attendance to both the fall conference and the annual conference, and also to the basic economic development course through our own funds. So the only funds that would be needed, we're trying to reduce any barrier to an EDO, especially an EDO in a rural area that might have tight resources. We're trying to remove all barriers to be able to access this program for all EDOs. So we pay for everything we possibly can through the foundation. I failed to mention too, we also offer ECU Training Academy class or course to these folks as well. So we're trying to pack the professional development in there as much as we can.
And then just only like responsibility on the side of the EDO for host organization for that professional development is just scheduling, making sure that they're going to be out of the office, during that time frame. And we'd also encourage, even if you don't normally attend the annual conference, to make sure you do if you have a fellow, so that you can be with them and kind of introduce them around and all of that stuff.
As you would expect, there are some people who are in a master's program who know how to network. They built their network. They're fine with chatting with people that they don't know. There are others who have not had that experience, and this is maybe the first big experience networking at a huge conference with 400 people. So that's part of the learning experience that we expect these fellows to take on, is getting out there and starting to learn how to build your network. And there's no better opportunity than the annual conference and the fall conference to do that. Other questions or thoughts on potential projects or concerns that you might have that we could address for you? some people wonder, do I actually have time to host a fellow? And I think because of the resources that the foundation provides and the types of orientation that Natalie mentioned and the service that Liz and Blair provide to help make the process seamless, I believe it's going to be a benefit to any EDO that wants to participate and well worth your time.
Yeah, I would say Randall too. I mean, we had an opportunity to do an internship this summer too. And I asked myself like, oh my gosh, do I have time to take on, another, responsibility of managing? But, what I found with Cameron at least was extremely intelligent, self-starter. I just provided the guardrails and said, here's what I'd like for you to do. Here are all the resources for you to do it. And, I'm here to answer questions. I'm here to support you. There were times when, something was a little bit, I guess, advanced for him, he didn't have all the knowledge or information. And so I said, let me take that part of the report and let me pull some of that together, and then we'll just work jointly on it. But I think it really worked well to just give them the objective and the resources and let him go, because he was so smart. I mean, I even let him work remotely on days that he needed to, he had other obligations. And he was super responsible and, ultimately achieved the goal that we laid out for him. So they're just, I hate to say it, but these young people, can I say that? They are so smart, and like they know what they're doing, and they're a big help.
We had, to that point, Natalie, we had some great applications this year for fellows. It was difficult to whittle it down to just 2 people that we would work with. So I would anticipate that happening again. They are sharp people who are driven to excel. Some of them already know they want to go into economic development. Some are just wondering, is this the right field? But they bring significant skills to the table to work with you for 10 to 12 weeks over the summer.
Mhm.
Any other questions, concerns, ideas?
Yeah, this is Kelly Andrews. Wanted to ask the Mideast Commission project, that I guess that wasn't a traditional EDO. And I have a project in mind. I know Natalie mentioned Cameron was really wanting to get into some BRE, and so that's really a focus area. We're trying to revamp our program. And so I've talked with ECU, and ECU has a renewed focus on industry engagement. So we may be working with them on trying to kind of tag team and do that together. Would that be something, I mean, would that be an issue of, them working with multiple entities? I would think not, but just wanted to throw that out there, that we might have them, or might want to propose a program that would collaborate with multiple entities, not just the EDO.
I think that would be amazing for that fellow to be able to have that kind of additional exposure to other organizations. I think we would request that you be the solo host, the EDO host, and to manage that person probably and manage their activity, but to do that in partnership with other organizations with you as the lead. I think that makes a lot of sense. Are there other thoughts on that?
That
Liz or
makes
Blair or
sense.
now?
Yeah.
I just had an idea for a project for a rural community. If
Okay.
if you're looking for a project, I just thought to myself, oh man, maybe I should apply again. But I know you got to spread the wealth, Randall. So, but in talking about BRE, we've investigated. We don't have a CRM system, right? So we're just tracking all of our BRE visits in Excel. But you can use HubSpot as a CRM for free. And like, wouldn't that be great for a rural community to be able to bring in a fellow to like set up a CRM system and a BRE schedule for their community? I think that would be a great project.
Yeah, I mean, that's along the lines, and we're even
Yeah.
thinking about like a portal for industries.
Mhm.
ECU has portals for student engagement that are a good template, and we were really wanted to replicate that and do something for industry. So that was kind of the lane we were looking at into. Yeah.
Very good. Thanks for that, Kelly. Yeah, I think your proposal sounds good, what you just mentioned. Other questions or ideas?
I might jump in and say one thing, and it's probably listed in the application, but I'll just reiterate the importance of being specific with certain skills that you're looking for the fellow to have. We did have a little bit of feedback from this last summer where, you know, maybe they were expecting that they had stronger computer skills than they did. So it's just important if you've got a project that's specific to that, you know, just identify it so that when we're looking at the applications, the matching is done appropriately.
Thank you, Blair. Last chance for questions, or at least on this Zoom call. Please feel free to reach out to Liz or Blair or me at any time if you have additional questions or concerns, or you're thinking about doing an application but not sure. We're happy to walk through any concerns or ideas that you might have. But any last questions for this Zoom call? Well, I want to thank y'all again for joining us, taking your time to join us today. I hope you'll think about applying for this program. It's a wonderful program, I have to say, and we've been fortunate so far to work with some amazing EDO hosts, Natalie being one of those, and a leader for us, an ambassador for us. So thank you again, Natalie, for everything you do. Liz and Blair are wonderful leaders for this program, so feel free to reach out to them, and they can help you work through the process as well. But thanks again for your time today and for your interest in working with the foundation on this important program. We're really trying to help EDOs across the state at the same time that we build our future economic developers and the professionals that will take us into 2026 and beyond in the profession. So thank you so much, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care.